My parents had just had their first child, my oldest sister Kathy. They had been living in Italy at the time. My dad was in the Air Force, and had brought her back to the US, to introduce her to the grandparents. So their first night there, my mom was asleep in the front bedroom, jet-lagged. My dad had gone out to hang out with his brothers. In the middle of the night, this woman walks into my mom's room, waking her up. She sits down on the bed and says, "It's okay. I just wanted to welcome you to the family." My mom was scared, obviously, but figured this was some relative, maybe a family friend or someone that just came over. The woman walks over to the bassinet where my baby sister was sleeping. "Is this your daughter?" she asked. My mom nodded. "She's beautiful. It's lovely to meet you both." And then she leaves. My mom wakes up the next day, and is having breakfast with my grandmother when she brings it up. "Who was the woman that came over last night?" My grandmother had no idea what she was talking about. My mom told her the whole story and my grandmother asked what she looked like. My mom said, she was tall, had long white hair and was wearing a blue dress. My grandmother's face went as white as a sheet. She rummaged through some old pictures and pulled one out. "Is this the person?" she asked my mom, who nodded in return. "That's my mother. She's been dead for 20 years, and we buried her in a blue dress." Starting from about age 5, I have always been afraid of my bedroom. I especially feared the fireplace in the corner, covered in a black metal grate that seemed to disappear when the lights went out. At night in the dark, I saw people come out of the opening. Though they never looked at me, I think they knew I was there. One figure always came slinking out of the fireplace. It was a young woman. My family has always been skeptical when it comes to the paranormal, so they decided it was just me being a scared kid with an overactive imagination, and the dreams would go away. Eventually, every night I became so terrified to go to sleep I fought them, kicking and screaming while saying I didn't want to go to sleep, and refused to go until threatened by my parents. I finally convinced them to paint over the metal grate of the fireplace, and to this day it is painted bright white. I continued to be terrified of the room, and eventually at 14 years old, started sleeping on the floor, because the nightmares wouldn't stop, despite therapy and medication. The figure had red hair, petite, lots of makeup, dark eyeshadow, and bruises all over her face, so swollen it was hard to see her eyes. Last week, my mom finally told me something she avoided telling me for years. While I was still a kid, the fighting over bedtime got so bad that a neighbor heard the screaming. We live in New York City, so she was across the hall. She was about 70 years old and lived in her apartment long before we moved in, was worried by the screaming, because of the previous events that took place here. Apparently, a drug dealer lived in our house before we moved in, and committed a murder inside the house, in my room. He beat a woman to death, and stuffed the body in the fireplace. I'm a nurse, and while I was a student I was caring for a lady who had end-stage renal failure. She had a DNAR, and was shutting down. We were having a little chat, while I was chatting away while helping her put on some lotion, when she stopped, looked over my shoulder, and said, "Bill's here, I've got to go," and swiftly stopped breathing, and passed away. I read her old notes, and Bill was her deceased husband. An old World War II vet I knew as my neighbor in Pennsylvania, once told me during the war he had an officer who had gotten the tattoo of the devil on his arm. Everyone told him it was a bad omen, but he didn't care. He told everyone that the devil can't hurt me, or I'm not afraid of the devil. Most people know the brutality of the war. You are exposed and vulnerable. He said their trench got hit by shells and he was knocked unconscious. His left ear was burned as well as his face, and he was deaf in that ear forever. When he came to, they counted heads, but nobody could find the officer, he said. Then I saw a pair of boots smoldering, where he had last seen the officer. He realized that there was a piece of flesh stuck to his uniform, and he panicked thinking he was injured. But when he removed it with his fingers it was not his, but the tattoo of the devil completely untouched on a piece of skin that belonged to the officer. With its devilish grin and not a scratch on it. When I was young, the first 10 years were fine. Then the creepiness started to happen. My older brother was a troubled teen, and apparently at some point played with a Ouija board by himself, in one of the bedrooms upstairs, as well as in the basement. Both rooms felt unusually cold. I think he invited something to move into the house with us. I didn't like my bedroom, my room was weird, and I hated it. From the get-go, strange things started to happen. I used to sleep with my door open, but now hated it because it felt like something was coming up the stairs late at night. I knew where every creak in the stairs were, when you stepped on it. I was the deepest sleeper ever, nothing could wake me except water splashed on my face. My mom kept a spray bottle on my nightstand, to wake me up for school. My brain would wake me from sleep every night at 2:50 a.m., then again at 2:54, and 2:58. And at 3 a.m. I'd get bone-chilling bad vibes. I would hide under my blankets, try to sleep on my face, anything to make me go back to sleep, to avoid being stared down at whatever was visiting me. I begged my little sister to let me stay in her room, but she wasn't having it. I started to video chat with my best friend at night, to help me fall asleep. Her talking and later snoring was comforting. Things got better, and I didn't have any incidents until one night a week or two later. We were video chatting, I fell asleep, then woke up at 2:56 a.m. I knew what was coming. I hid under my blankets, I could hear the creaks on the stairs getting closer, they stopped. A few moments later my bed shook, and like an idiot I peeked out of my blanket, saw nothing but felt an instant wave of dread and sickness wash over me. I ran to my sister's room, and puked my brains out, then I passed out. My sister got our parents, and after I woke up told them what happened. I don't think they really believed me, but my mom said a prayer in my room, and I didn't have any incidents after that. But here's the kicker. My best friend recorded the video, and played back an extremely creepy sound. From her viewpoint you can see me sleeping, and drooling onto my pillow. At the 2:56 a.m. mark I bolt up from deep sleep, glance at the clock, and cover my head under the blanket. She could hear the ticking of my clock, as well as the creaks on the stairs. At 3 a.m. there's a strange clicking sound, like the noise someone makes with their tongue and roof of their mouth. It gets louder, and louder until it hits the bed with a thud, and the whole bed shakes, at which point I take a peek, then throw off the blanket, I am white as a sheet, and run out of the room. At the thud you can hear a heavily thick accented old man's voice say something, but the only part that's clear, is when he says, "This is good," the rest is unclear. My sister once slept in my room, my grandma was visiting and was sleeping in hers. I was at a friend's house that night. And she experienced something. She said she woke up around 3 a.m. and felt like something was pinning her down, and she couldn't scream for help. It lasted maybe a minute or two before she ran to our parents' bedroom. Anytime her bedroom was being used by a guest, she refused to sleep in my room, and slept on the floor in my parents' bedroom. I went into the basement for some peace and quiet. I fell asleep on my brother's bed, he had gone to work, and woke up with the same feeling as my sister. Being pinned down and unable to scream or move. It felt like 10 minutes, but could have only been a minute or two. I heard my mother calling my name looking for me, and I felt like I could feel the thing move off the bed and off of me. I ran upstairs so fast, and never slept in the basement again. One day my brother told me after he played with the Ouija board, he heard something come up the stairs, creaks and all. He awoke at 3 a.m., and something grabbed his legs and yanked him out of his bed. He fell on the floor with a thud, loud enough that my parents woke up, and ran to his bedroom to find him looking bewildered, and white as a sheet on the floor next to his bed. I was probably about 20, and I was babysitting for some decent people who happened to be good friends. I was on the main floor, there was one little boy upstairs in bed, and 4 older boys, 8 and 9, downstairs playing video games. It was probably close to 11 p.m., and there's a knock at the door. I can see it's a big guy in a red sweatshirt. I slowly crawl to the kitchen and grab the biggest knife I can find, and I go stand at the wall by the door where the man cannot see me, but would have to walk past me to come in. I call the homeowner because they have a Ring doorbell, and this was when it was very new and few people had it, so she can talk to the man through her phone. So she says, "I'll call you right back after I talk to him," and hangs up. Meanwhile, the guy is knocking aggressively now, and I'm praying none of the kids hear, as I don't want them to come downstairs and scare them. My phone rings and she says that she talked to him, and he said he was with Uber, which was not popular in this area at that time. She said he's looking for Angela, which ironically happens to be the homeowner's name. She said she told him he had the wrong address, and to be on his way. However, he is still at the door. She stays on the phone with me until he walks away, which was several minutes later. We hang up as she thinks it was an honest misunderstanding. Meanwhile, I have this terrible awful feeling in my gut, so I go to the door to watch for his headlights to leave. Their house is at the end of a dead-end road. I never saw his headlights leave, nor did I ever see a car. He must have walked there. I laid on the couch staring at the door until daylight at 7 a.m., when I finally fell asleep, only to be awoken by the kids at 8 a.m. I'm a 20-year-old, 100-pound 5'3" female. The whole time this big man was standing at the door, all I could think to myself was, you have to kill him. If he comes through that door, you have to give it your everything, and stop him. You have to protect these 5 little boys. You have to stab him and don't stop. It's honestly a scary way to think, but the motherly instinct in me was telling me I have to save the kids at all costs. Thankfully, he never came back that night, and I didn't have to test my strength. So basically, I've had quite a few paranormal occurrences happen to me, and I want to share them with everyone. I'll talk about my first one now. So this story starts on a Saturday night. Before going to bed, I was quite sick, which made me fall asleep quickly. I heard a click, a strange clicking sound that woke me up. I looked around the room with my head feeling heavy. One thing I noticed later the next day was that my light was on, and one of my window's curtains were wide open. Anyway, as I looked round the room, I thought I saw something in the corner of my eye. Keep in mind, in all my stories I'm a very paranoid person, but I really thought I saw something. I looked at the window, with its curtains open, where I thought I saw something, and I kid you not, there through the window was half of a head. It was really dark outside. I think it was about 2:30 a.m., but I don't know. Since it was dark, the half of the head was pitch black. As soon as I saw the half of the head, it quickly ducked down. I'm not sure how I got the courage, but about 10 minutes later of just laying there in shock, I got up and looked through the window. I didn't see anything, but I saw the back door that would let you into the back garden, and it was wide open. To this day I can't explain this, and all the other paranormal events don't seem connected to each other, so I'd say this is just a mystery. I woke up at 4 a.m. that night, and I decided to light some candles. But I got distracted and decided to go into my hallway. I zoned out looking into my mirror, then I'm not kidding, I felt the worst feeling ever. I suddenly was scared for no reason. I was fine before, but then suddenly this wave of fear just crashed over me. After that, I walked back into my room, and I swear I saw a white figure peek its head out from my closet. I ran to the corner of my room, and started crying while calling all of my friends. This was terrifying, and things like this still happen to me frequently, no matter where I am. Can someone please help me? My parents always claimed there was an unknown spirit that followed us around from house to house. We called him George. I think he was something more than a regular spirit, and it fed off my parents' negative energy. My dad saged the house when we were not inside, which was the wrong way to do it. He said that as he was pushing the evil out, something growled right in his face. A week later, I started seeing a shadow man. He appeared at the end of the hall one time, and my mom didn't notice, and walked right past him. The shadow barged in while I was taking a shower. I saw it pass by the curtain, and yelled at him to leave. Which then the shadow went right back where it came from. Since I moved out, I don't see him anymore. I cut contact with my parents for personal reasons. I just don't feel safe there, and I feel like that house is a trap for negativity and anger. I will never go back and see them again. When I was about 10 years old, this happened. It was in my old house. For reference, my bedroom was very small. My bed was on the side of the wall, and if I turned to my left I could see my door. Basically, I woke up one night at 3 or 4 a.m. for no reason, and I was sweating so much. It's not like I had a bad dream though. In fact, I don't even think I dreamed at all. Anyways, my mom has 3 different colored tops for her work uniform, a purple, red and black. The purple top was new, and she rarely ever wore it to work. So I woke up and I saw that my door was slightly open, and the hallway light was on. I saw what appeared to be my mother staring right back at me, but it wasn't her. She had no mouth or nose, just eyes. I stared back and slightly yelled out, "Ma, what are you doing?" She didn't respond, and then I hear her say what, but it came from her bedroom. So what the heck was the thing staring at me? And like I said before, my mom rarely ever wore that purple top, but the thing at the door was wearing it. After that, not sure how, but I fell right to sleep, and woke up before my mom, at around 6 a.m. The hallway light was off, but I so clearly remember it being on. Otherwise I wouldn't have seen the thing. After that day I come back home, and so does my mom. Guess what top she was wearing that day to work? Purple. Ever since that day I can honestly still imagine the way it looked. Like a human, but it just wasn't. I don't know what it was. My aunt had recently gotten divorced, and had just bought a house in a new town. She originally lived in a big city in Tennessee, and moved to a little quiet town. She invited us to come stay for a visit, my mom, dad, older sister, and I. So we plan a trip to go stay. My cousins are just a bit younger than me. I remember arriving and thinking that it was kind of a creepy little town that had an eerie feel to it. There was nobody around, very few cars, and no kids playing in the neighborhood. It was the first night there, and we all got settled in to go to sleep. My parents take my aunt's room, my aunt sleeps in one of my cousin's rooms, and I sleep in one of my cousin's rooms with her, and my sister sleeps in the living room with my other cousin. It's probably around 2 a.m., and my cousin and I are still up talking. We start hearing a knock coming from the outside wall. We think it's just the wind, considering their backyard is fenced in. I then mentioned to her how I felt like I was being watched, and she commented that she did too, so we assume it's just my sister and cousin spying on us. We're all between 10 and 16 years old. A little while later, probably 30 minutes or so, I hear my sister from the living room, quietly calling for my aunt in a shaky voice. Although I'm the younger sister, I'm also the more protective one, so I go running to the living room to see what's wrong, and she points to the back door. I look over and we can clearly see the doorknob and door shaking violently. I run and get my aunt, and as soon as she turned on the lights, the door stopped moving. We go get my parents, and my dad goes outside, and checks the whole house, and finds scratches on the back door around the handle. It's creepy to think that this person was probably watching my cousin and I for a while, before he decided to try to break it. I'm just thankful he didn't actually get in. We're also not sure how he got in the yard. It's fenced in. It's a very tall wooden fence with no gate. Needless to say, I didn't sleep the rest of that trip. I don't think anyone did. Like a lot of kids, I had an imaginary friend until I was about 9 or 10. I described him as looking like me, red hair, glasses, and having the same birthday as myself, and I called him G, because my first name starts with a G. As I grew up, G faded away. Fast forward to my 20th birthday. I come home from college for a dinner with my parents and younger siblings. We joke around about our childhoods when my sister mentions G. My dad gets quiet and my mom goes pale. She demands we drop the subject. The next day, after my siblings leave, my parents sit me down and explain that I had a twin brother, who died when we were about a year old. He had a congenital heart problem, and passed away during surgery. They elected not to tell me, although they couldn't really explain why. My mom kept the letters to G that I wrote. It was mostly scribbles, and all the pictures I drew of him and I playing. She thinks I was with my brother during those times. When I was younger, I was raised in a poor neighborhood. I was around 6 years old, and I didn't know much about paranormal at the time. All I knew was that I had a happy family life. Things weren't always good. We had our ups and downs, but most of the time it was good. When I was little, apparently I had a ghost friend, and I can remember what that person looked like. He had brown hair, and was short. He had a button-up jacket with a bow tie. One day my dad had to work, so I was alone at the time. My parents were only in their 20s, so they didn't know better, and around that time my neighborhood wasn't that bad. We had really kind neighbors, and they would make food for us, and send it to our house. But one day I was riding my bike in the house like I usually did. Since my dad wasn't there, he wouldn't yell at me. I'm taking my bike and I pull it back near our air conditioner, but the air conditioner was completely off. I put my bike all the way back to the door, and all of a sudden I hear a voice whisper my name. Frightened, I ran to my room, and hid under my covers. Later my parents came home, and thought nothing of it. The next day when I was at school, and my dad was laying in bed, he heard my dolls being played with, and noises in my room. He went back to bed and thought nothing of it. He got up in time to pick me up from school, and we went home and took a nap. Then he heard banging at the bottom of our bed. It was so loud it sounded like a baseball bat was hitting the bed. He got up, picked me up, and we hid in the closet. Then he walked out of the closet and called my mom. When he did, she didn't believe him. But the next day I had a day off from school, and my mom was laying in bed. Then she had a dream. I was in the corner of her room next to her bed, saying, "Don't hurt my mommy, please. Don't hurt my mommy," and to leave her alone. There was a shadow on the ceiling with red eyes. She wakes up, and I'm in the corner of the room looking up at the ceiling, just like in her dream. I got back from overseas not long ago. Back near the end of 2020. I was visiting my family for Christmas, and I slept in my old room since there was still a bed there, and I needed the space so I could keep all my pets there. I have a lot of caged animals, and needed more space than the basement guest room. This plays a factor in my story later. I had a good Christmas that year, and the night before I left is when it happened. I was finished feeding my pets, and was talking to my at the time fiancé, and then it happened. I heard the familiar sounds of steps on the roof. Then the familiar thud outside my window. I was petrified. I hadn't seen him for over a year, and he shows up now. I pretended to go to sleep, and he seemed to just look puzzled. He looked like he was about to leave, but one of my hamsters decided to start biting the bars of their cage, and it caused him not to stay. I had to get out of my bed while he was watching, and transfer them to a cage without any bars. He stayed outside my window till the sun started coming up, and the creepiest thing happened before he left. I thought these guys weren't supposed to talk, but in a guttural and deep voice he said, "Welcome back." This scared the crap out of me. By this time it was about 4 a.m. and I had a 5 to 7 hour drive, and I've had no sleep. I couldn't sleep till about 6 a.m. and I slept till about 9. The Wendigo I also saw had matured. I learned this while overseas. One person in my squad informed me that the skull on their heads indicate that it means they're an adult, and when they don't it means they're in the adolescent stage. Which is probably why I'm alive. I've had a lot of times in my life which I should have died. I think my luck is running out. Hope that's the last time I see him. I had a series of events. They took place in a haunted apartment I used to live in. For background to my story, in my house years before, a little boy died. It was a fire. He was with his family there, and he was burned and died. Once my family and I were laying on the couch on Christmas Eve, and we heard somebody walking on our roof. Mind you, our apartment building was 3 stories high, so nobody could get up on the roof, and the stairs to the roof was blocked off. My dad goes outside with a baseball bat thinking that a burglar was trying to get into our house, and he goes out and looks by where the roof's at, and sees nothing, so we were thinking we were okay. It may have been the wind, or something falling on the building. He said, "Let's just go back inside." So we went back inside and went to bed, and in the morning I woke up my parents like usual, and we had our Christmas morning. While I was opening gifts my mom took out a camera, and started taking pictures, and all of a sudden she sees these orbs fly at the camera, and she gets a wind gust on her face, and freaks out and drops the camera. Then she sees a shadow walk across the wall, and then she takes me and leaves the house, because she didn't want us to be in there. And when we got home later everything was okay. So I get ready to lay down again, and I just got this new toy, It was a truck that had pedals at the bottom of it, to where you could pedal it around, and it had my blocks in the back of the trunk. Mind you, there's a deadbolt lock on the back of it. So we start walking away, and my bag of blocks is in the truck, and then the deadbolt lock unlocks, and my whole entire bag falls out of my trunk, and then my mom grabs me and puts me in my room, and she locked the door. In the morning my dolls were set up right in my room, and it looked like somebody had been playing with them, and one of my dolls was hanging from the ceiling on a rope. My mom took it down and got really upset. One day my mom found me in my closet talking to my teddy bear. What she thought it was normal, but then she heard me talking about how my dad was cheating on her. Then she called my dad, and said, "Is this true?" He said it was, and later he told me that's how they split up, because of a spirit. Whatever it was could also fall out of my trash can, and make it roll across the ground, and up the back. It did this right in front of my eyes. This is my third story of many on the paranormal, and I think this is the craziest one so far. This story starts in the summer holidays when I was off school. I was about 15 then, and at the time, me and my friends loved exploring places. One day my closest friend, Zach, told me he found an abandoned area out in this woodland area. At about 10 p.m. we set off. At first we were joking around and trying to scare each other, but then it started. We hadn't even made it there, when Zach mentioned that he felt like we were being followed. As he told me, I started to feel the same thing. I looked behind us into the darkness, and whoosh. A stick had been thrown, just missing my head. I started to run the direction we were already going, and Zach did the same once he realized what just happened. When we made it to the abandoned area, we still didn't feel safe. We decided to go separate ways in the area. We always did, and we had walkie-talkies just in case. About half an hour of me exploring, and finding graffiti and other junk, I hear static from my walkie-talkie. "Natty, you need to come," I said. "I'm not falling for your joke, Zach, I'm already scared from before." "Natty, I'm being serious, you have to come." Hearing how serious Zach was, I reluctantly came to his location. When I got there, Zach was staring at the wall. I called his name, and he replied from another room, "I'm in this room over here." My heart dropped. The person I was looking at wasn't Zach. I ran to the room where Zach was, and as soon as I got there, I peeked my head round the corner. The person was gone. We sprinted out of there back to our houses as fast as we could. Zach would later tell me that what he called me for was he heard someone coming down the stairs, right next to the room, and that was probably the stranger who was most likely mentally ill. We never visited places at night again, at least not ones that were abandoned. This happened about 6 or 7 years ago on a summer night. I was at my friend's house one night and there was 3 of us. It was around 11:30 or so. And we decided that we wanted to go ding-dong ditching. For those of you who don't know, ding-dong ditching is when you ring a doorbell, and then run away. The neighborhood that he lived in is very dark at night, because there are no street lights, only lights on street corners, that are only there so cars don't drive off the road. My friends and I have gone ding-dong ditching a few times before, so we knew that we should relieve our bladders before heading off. We were already outside at this point, so we just relieved ourselves in bushes. One of the friends and I had already finished, so we stood towards the end of the driveway, talking while the other friend was closer to house. My friends and I have gone ding-dong ditching a few times before, so we knew that we should relieve our bladders before heading off. We were already outside at this point, so we just relieved ourselves in bushes. One of the friends and I had already finished, so we stood towards the end of the driveway, talking while the other friend was closer to house. While we talked, I faced out toward the street, while my friend faced me. As we talked, I saw a tall, pure black figure running up the sidewalk across the street. It took me a second to process what I was seeing, but when I did, I must have shown an expression of shock, because the friend I was talking to started running for the house right as I did. I saw the thing, and my friend said that he heard it running. The other friend near the house just ran inside because we did, and was in denial about everything. Details of this thing: it was very tall. I was probably 5'10" at the time, and I could tell this thing was significantly taller than me, probably 6'2" at least. It ran on 2 legs, and had the physique of a lean runner. I know I said that this neighborhood was very dark, but this thing was black, pure black, and there was no sign of it wearing clothing. If it was wearing clothes, it had to be some skin-tight outfit that was black. Too fast for me to call it human. I refer to this thing as just in it, because I truly don't believe this is a human as much as it is shaped like one. I ran track and cross country at the time, so I could judge how fast it was running, and there is not an ounce of doubt in my mind that tells me it could possibly be a human running that fast. It was also running uphill. My friends, even the one who heard the running, didn't believe what I saw, but one night, later that same summer, my friend had a large gathering of boys who all went ding-dong ditching. Sadly, I was not present on this occurrence. The boys made it far down the neighborhood when they saw it, a dark figure running that fits my description. They were much further away than I was, so I take my description as the more accurate one. In their case, however, they saw it running back and forth across the street, running out of view, then back into view, then out again. So what do you think of these stories? Do you have any to share? Let us know in the comments below, and as always, please like and subscribe.